My name is Dr. Daniel Black, and I'm a professor of African American Studies at the illustrious Clark Atlanta University. I am the Toni Morrison Writer in Residence this year at Prairie View A&M University, the great purple and gold, and I'm glad to be here. I was born in Kansas City and lived there for the first 5-6 years of my life. And then my father moved back home for him, which was Blackwell, Arkansas. And I grew up in Blackwell, Arkansas, a very, very rural community right in the center of the state. A very wonderful place. I left there and went to what was then Clark College. This was 1984. And I graduated 1988 from Clark College, which is now Clark Atlanta University. I went to Temple University and got a PhD, and then I made my way back to Clark, which was Clark Atlanta University by that time. And I've been on faculty for the last 31 years. When I was a child, there was a show on TV called The Waltons. And there was a young man on The Waltons named John Boy. And it was a white family, and he was a boy who loved to write, and he wrote about his family. And I really admired him. I admired his intelligence. I admired the way people admired him. And it kind of gave me an idea that I could do that kind of same thing for my people, in terms of being a writer. That's one thing. The other thing that made me want to be a writer was I read James Baldwin when I was in high school. And the words of James Baldwin, the lyricism of his prose, the way this man could put words together and create music in sentences was something I just had never, ever, ever seen before. And I just played around with the idea that perhaps I could do that one day. And not because I thought it was going to make money, I didn't think that, but because I believed it'd make a lot of influence. Words have a lot of power. I come from the Black church tradition, where preachers have a lot of power and a lot of influence, because a good preacher knows how to manipulate words and move hearts and move souls and excite people and invite people into the shout and into the dance. And I was the piano player at our church, the pianist, from about age 5, age 6, up until now, actually. And so I was in church all the time, constantly. And I really, really admired the way many preachers had this facility with language. And so those things, I think, all kind of converged and led me to this career. The truth of the matter is, words are life. One of the scriptures in the Bible I like is, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And the same was in the beginning with God. And I think people read over that too fast. Because if the Word was God, then every time we open our mouths, we create. And I think that is something most people take far too lightly. I think even the ways in which we demean and degrade each other, very often not knowing, unknowingly, very often unwillingly, but it happens nonetheless, because the words obey, right, what you speak. They don't obey your heart. I never, ever run out of things to write about. I never, ever run out of ideas. I run out of time. And so self-doubt, I definitely have. Sometimes I'll write something and I'll think it's pretty good. And then other times I'll write something and I think this is not good at all, though others then later tell me it's wonderful, And so I think self-doubt always creeps in, because I think writing is a craft. And like most crafts, one is always growing in it and moving in it. And so the more you grow, the more you look back and the more chagrin you have about what you did yesterday, or what you wrote yesterday. And so the only way, though, to overcome self-doubt is to trust yourself, right? To take the risk to trust yourself. And so I'll write something and I have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 friends of mine to read it. And if they say it's trash, it's trash. You just have to believe that somebody else is as smart as you. You have to believe that you're not so deep that other people couldn't get it. And if that's true, it's still bad, because then you're the only one who's going to buy this book, And so the main thing I think that I do, that I try to tell other folks to do, is trust that you have the right friends. And the right friends can give you a good sense of the quality of your art. I think sometimes, it's not always true, but I think sometimes where young people sometimes get off track is they try to produce more than they intake. meaning a writer, you have to read 3 times more than you write. Or if you're playing basketball, you have to practice far more than you actually play in terms of a game. If you're a singer, you have to learn songs. You know, if you're an R&B singer now, you need to know Aretha, you need to know Sam Cooke, you need to know Whitney Houston, you need to know Gladys, you've got to know the tradition. But a lot of young people are trying to figure out how to create as if they are their own tradition, right? Like, I'm just gonna be me, I'm just gonna do me. The problem with doing you is that it ain't much to do, right? Because also what this means is sometimes people are thinking you're being original, and actually somebody already did that 40 years ago. But one would know that if you had studied the tradition. And so I read profusely, right? And because I read, that's why I never run out of words, because I'm always reading something, learning new words, learning new phrases, learning new ways of saying things, new ways of articulating a thing. And so I'm always excited to see how that translates into my own work. I think if a person says, you know, I just don't have any ideas, I think what that generally means is that a person needs to stop trying to create and go back to being a student for a while. I think I would tell most young people, first of all, you can't really write well if you can't write honestly. And the first thing I tell most young people is keep a journal and tell the raw truth, at least in your journal, if you don't tell it anywhere else. At least see it in print somewhere. Now, you don't have to give it to your mom and daddy, you ain't got to give it to your best friends, but at least transfer it from the heart out somewhere. And a journal is a good place, you know, that one keeps privately, because at least one has to admit it to him or her. You have to start there, I think. And then the second piece of advice I think I would give a young person is to begin to play around with the notion that being afraid of other people's perception, being afraid of what other people say about you, being afraid of what other people do with your truth is really making them go. And that's giving people entirely too much power. It's just too much power we give away to other people, and it puts us in a bondage. And the truth of the matter is you can never tell God anything. So whatever secret you think you're keeping, God already knows. And if God doesn't trouble your sleep about it, nobody else has any power to do so. When I wrote my first novel, They Tell Me of a Home, is when I discovered that I couldn't write if I were not going to tell the full truth. Because every time I would begin to write, I would inch up on that truth and I could feel it coming. I was like, oh, I can't say that. Oh, so-and-so's feelings are going to be hurt if I put that in the book. Oh, God, if I say that, then people are going to know X, Y, and Z about me. And what I realized then is that I was entertaining my own incarceration, and I just wasn't willing to do it. I wasn't willing to be in bondage for the rest of my life to people, many of whom really didn't care enough about me anyway for me to give them that kind of power over my existence, right? And so metaphorically, and in some ways quite literally, I said, you know, I'm gonna taste this freedom thing, and it's gonna be all right, because if God has kept my secrets up to this point, God must be all right with me. And so I said, I'm just gonna write honestly. And there were folks who called and said, oh my God, I didn't know you did that. You didn't? Oh, now you do, and then it's done. See, really the power is taking away other people's ability to manipulate you, right? By you taking the sting out of truth. Well, what I'm praying is that in my time here, I can plant the kind of seeds that will make PVM students want to know more about their history, their heritage. And I'm praying I can plant seeds that might make some PVM kids, young people, consider the possibility that writing is their life calling. And most people say, well, I don't want to write because you don't make any money writing. First of all, that's not true. Plenty of people make money writing and make good money writing. What is true is you can't make much money if you're a mediocre writer. Now that is true, but most good writers are not unemployed. So I'm hoping I can help people to consider the possibility that writing would be an awesome career. And then the third thing is I'm hoping I can help PVM students take the risk to be vulnerable enough that they write about dangerous things that would change the world.